Hello, guys. Good morning.
Good morning, teacher.
Welcome. It's Georgina, Renee, Liliana, Adilene, and Jose Luis. Welcome, guys. Here comes Aaron too.
Hi, good morning, Christian.
How are you guys?
Good. Thank God, and you?
Today, I'm not feeling really well. My stomach is killing me.
I've been there.
Yeah, my stomach is killing me. But here we are. We have Aaron. Welcome, Aaron. We have Joshua.
Could you see me, guys?
No.
Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes.
Please,
Yes, Azareli.
my camera is okay. On now. Now?
No.
Let me try.
Welcome, Yuvia. Aaron, Marisa, welcome.
I'm using an alternative webcam because the original just doesn't work anymore. But I don't know why. Okay. Let me try unplug and plug again my webcam.
Okay. I'm going to begin posting my screen with you.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. So we have Azareli, Georgina, Renee, Marisa, Ana Karen, but looks like Gaby. Lluvia, Liliana, Joshua, Adilene, and Aaron.
And me.
And Jose Luis, I didn't see you. Oh, yeah, yes. I didn't see you, Jose Luis. Now I do. Gaby, Ana Karen is the name of your daughter.
Yeah, she's my daughter,
Okay.
and sometimes she uses my computer. So for that reason, sometimes is the name on the screen.
Okay. Hey, how far along are you? How many months do you have?
My daughter.
No, you're pregnant, right?
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
yes. I have almost 9 months.
Almost.
Yes.
Oh, time flies by.
Yes.
And everything okay?
Yes. At the moment, everything it's okay. Thank you.
Excellent. So when are you due to give birth?
I think I don't know. I think I'm going to Los Mochis to give birth, but I think it will be on vacation, so I hope I will be relaxed in that period of time.
We hope so. I hope that everything goes right.
Thank you, teacher.
Oh, in a few days, Gabi, we're going to
Yes,
have a
totally.
niece. Yay!
We are going to soon know her.
We hope so. We hope so, Gabby. So we are here, all of us. If I'm not mistaken. Yes. Richard's missing Efraín, but
Teacher, Efraín ahorita se va a conectar, es que viene, no sé si venía manejando o venía en el carro, pero apenas va para allá, para los blancos.
okay. Okay, thank you, Dilene. Thank you.
You're
Okay, okay, guys, we're going to begin with our third and last session, which was about a very important aspect of teaching and speaking, and also writing. But you can use it also to teach all the 4 skills in an integrative way. So what do you think about task-based learning? Anyone? What is,
I think,
yes.
sorry, I think that a task-based learning is really helpful for us to help our students produce the language, actually produce it. I have used some task-based learning and I have seen it is very effective.
In what grades or in what grade have you used task-based learning medium?
Well, I teach primary, so I have used it in all 6 grades. Of course, I adapt the activity.
Excellent, very good. Thank you, Miriam. Somebody else who wants to share? What's your opinion about task-based learning? Have you used it? Do you think it could be useful?
I think, well, something that I learned in this blog was that sometimes we were confused about task-based learning because mostly we use it to teach speaking, but task-based learning can be used for all 4 skills.
Yes, yes, that's correct. Most of the time we think about task-based learning as a tool to teach speaking or to promote speaking, but no, we can use it in an integrative way to promote the 4 skills. Yes, Gabby, thank you. Somebody else, please.
Also, all the tasks that we use in this approach are useful for us to evaluate the English level that our students have.
Yes, indeed. Indeed, yes. That could be a very good tool for assessment. Thank you, very good. Okay, let's begin. As you can see, task-based language teaching has come from a long way. For instance, several teacher trainers have been the advocates for this approach, beginning with Prabhu in India in 1987, Stair and Sanon, 1994, Willis, David Noonan, and of course, Ellis. Also, it has some critics, of course. Sheen, it has written a lot about this approach. Also, Swan, Sid House has written a lot and has the most recent papers about this approach. There are several books also from Crooks and Gass, Skihan, Garcia Mayo, Eckert, and Sigman. But first, this all originated from Dewey's view about the problems with communicative teaching language. we have seen in the past, I don't know you, but in my case, when I first began to learn English as a foreign language, I was 7 years old. And when I went to the language center, the approach was a grammar translation. That was the approach. And when I went for the first time to the US in 1991, I could read and I could write, but I couldn't speak and I couldn't understand what they were saying to me. And that was the main problem with the grammar translation approach, that you could, yes, a person could read, a person could write, but he couldn't communicate. And this is the basis from where this approach came from, task-based language teaching.
Teacher, I got an experience talking
Yes.
about that. When my daughter got a degree, a bachelor in language English teaching.
Really?
Yes, he studied in
Great.
Chihuahua. In Chihuahua, all 5 summers or 6 summers, I don't remember. And the approach all the teachers used in that time was that you mentioned, the translated grammatic translated, I don't know the name, but all the task was translate Bee Gees songs or different songs, and that's why I learned a lot of songs, because I helped them a lot. And that's what the only task that my father had is translate things all the summers. That's the approach. And they got a degree. My father tiene el título, okay, pero like 20 years ago, I don't know.
Yes, yes. Yes, that was very common in those days. For instance, you were talking about 20 years ago. It's recent.
Yeah, or more, or maybe
more.
30. I'm not sure.
Okay, 30. Yeah, because this approach was very used in the 70s and the 80s, for instance, the grammar translation approach. But the problem is that the students didn't develop communicative skills. That was a problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose Luis. So there are many definitions about what a task is. Here I'm going to present a few of them. Somebody who wants to help me to read?
Me.
Okay.
Definitions. A task is a work plan that requires learners to process language pragmatically in order to achieve an outcome that can be evaluated in terms of whether the correct appropriate positional content has been conveyed. Ellis, 2003.
Thank you, Marisa. Yes, this is the definition that Rob Ellis is providing us. We're going to see more. Okay, Marisa, please choose a victim.
Josue.
Okay. TBLT draws on several principles that form part of the communicative language teaching movement from the 80s. Activities that involve real communication are essential for language learning. Activities in which language is used for carrying out meaningful tasks promote learning. Language that is meaningful to the learner supports learning process.
Thank you, Josue. And this is really important because one thing that the students need is to be able to engage in real communication activities, real communicative activities. And also it has to be meaningful, because if the activities or the tasks are meaningful, then they're going to be motivated to carry them out. Thank you, Josue. Choose another victim, please.
Okay, Rene.
Some concrete examples of a task: preparing a meal, ordering food in a cafe, talking to someone on the phone, completing qualities of a good friend, 2 pictures or text to find the differences, solving a problem, and designing a brochure.
Thank you, Rene. And
You're
here we
welcome.
can, thank you. Here we can see some examples of real tasks and also pedagogical tasks. Thank you. Rene, choose another victim, please.
Azarelli.
What is task-based learning? Task-based language learning, also known as task-based language teaching or task-based instruction, focuses on the use of an authentic language and on asking students to do meaningful tasks using the target language. Such tasks can include visiting a doctor, conducting an interview, or calling a customer service for help. Assessment is primarily based on task outcomes. In other words, the appropriate completion of tasks rather than on accuracy of language forms. This makes TVLL especially popular for developing target language fluency and student confidence.
Thank you, Sareli.
You're welcome.
And here we see why this approach has been very popular or is related with promoting speaking. But as we said earlier, it can be used to promote all the 4 skills. Okay, Sareli, choose another victim, please.
Abilene?
Okay. Task-based, okay. Task-based language teaching by Rod Ellis. Tasks involve a plan for learning activity. They have a primary focus on making meaning. They engage with real-world authentic language use. They focus on any or all of the 4 language skills. They engage learners in cognitive skills in order to accomplish them, and they have a defined communication-based learning outcome.
Thank you. So this is an extract of what Rod Ellis was talking about in the first video that you watch in this unit. It has all the characteristics of task-based language teaching. Okay, choose somebody else, please.
Liliana.
Historical background. Task-based learning, one of the most talked about recent methods, can be traced back to the strong communicative approach where teaching is done entirely through communicate tasks. There is no set grammar syllabus. Focusing on a language used after task has been completed is widely accepted as an eye to acquisition, and task repetition gives the students the chance to practice new language.
Thank you. Thank you, Liliana. As you remember, the communicative approach came from the need that the people had to be able to communicate, as the word says, in another language in a very short period of time. And this approach, the communicative approach, comes from the end of World War II. When, for instance, when the United States went to Europe and to free Europe from Germany. So the soldiers had to be able to communicate with the locals. Remember that the main battles of World War II took place in France, in Netherlands, and Germany. So the American soldiers had to be able to communicate, at least in a very in a beginner level, with the locals, could be the French or the Germans. So the government came up with this approach, the communicative approach, to promote their communicative competence without going to school. So they will, for instance, they will provide a situation where they can learn some lexical chunks in order to communicate in another language. Could be French or could be German. For instance, they learned not grammar, not vocabulary, but lexical chunks. For instance, a lexical chunk to able to say something. For instance, the one thing that I remember from a lesson about this approach was some words in French. For instance, right now I have a headache. So to say that in French is j'ai mal à la tête. So they didn't. I didn't learn the grammar for pronouns and verbs in French. You only learn the entire phrase, the lexical chunk, to communicate an idea. This is the whole basis behind the communicative approach, from which task-based learning is derives. Okay, choose somebody else, please.
Ignacio.
The assumption of task focus on process and meaning. Life.
No sé, corta.
Yes, we cannot hear you, Ignacio, properly. Okay, I'm going to read it. The key assumptions of task-based instruction by Thies, 1998, page 7 are: it focuses on processes, the emphasis in communication and meaning. Learners learn language by interacting communicatively and purposefully. Activities and tasks can be achieved in real life and have a pedagogical purpose. Activities and tasks of a task-based syllabus are sequenced according to difficulty. The difficulty of a task depends on the previous experience of a learner. So here, as we have been learning, task-based language teaching focus on the process of communication, not on form, not on vocabulary, not on, and sometimes not on a single skill. It focuses on the process of communication. And the emphasis is communication and also the meaning. You have to be able to convey meaning. Students have to be able to convey or to transmit the information they want to say to the other person. And well, students learn the language by interacting, by communicating with another person with a purpose in mind, for a function. And activities and tasks can be achieved, well, they can be done in real life, but also they can have a pedagogical purpose depending on the task and depending on the learning outcome. Here in most books that we use, the scope and the sequence of those books have relation with the vocabulary and the grammar. But in this case, no. It goes from, the tasks go from easy to intermediate level and to advanced. And also the difficulty of a task, well, it can be modified to suit the needs and also the experience of the learners. That is a good thing about this task. You can modify it to cater the needs and also the characteristics of your students. Ignacio, choose a victim, please.
Lluvia.
Okay, TDLT proposed the notion of task as a central unit of planning and teaching. It means task is an activity or goal that is carried out using language. Noonan, 1989, says The communicative task is a piece of classroom work which involves learners in comprehending, manipulating, producing, and interacting.
Thank you, Yuvia. Well, David Noonan states very well here the core of the process of task-based learning. First, students need to comprehend what is the task at hand. Then they manipulate the information, the input they're receiving, and also they manipulate it with what they already know. Then they produce some form of language, and at the end, they interact with their peers. So David Noonan has said here very well in a very short form, the core of task-based language teaching. Thank you, Yuvia. Choose somebody else, please.
I don't know who is missing. Aaron?
Aaron?
Okay.
Task-based training identifies several key areas of concern. Tasks can be easily related to students' real-life language needs. They create context that facilitates second language acquisition. Tasks create opportunity for focusing on form. Students are more likely to develop intrinsic motivation in a task-based approach. A task-based approach enables teachers to see if students are developing the ability to communicate.
Thank you, Aaron. Yes, in this case, task-based learning can be time-consuming because if you want to do it right, you have to relate the task to real-life language and also to the context of your students. That's why it can be sometimes time-consuming. But when you create the context according to the characteristic of your students, well, that could facilitate second language acquisition and also the interaction between the students. Yes, and sometimes according to the task and according to your work, you can create opportunities to focus on grammar or to focus in new vocabulary, but mixing it up so it comes up as a task and not like the PPP approach, which is presentation, practice, and production. Sometimes if you organize your task in a certain way, sometimes it can be easily transformed into PPP and not task-based learning. So you have to be very careful here. And yes, the basic need to develop this approach was to develop motivation in students, motivation to participate. And that motivation has to be intrinsic because that's the only way to promote student learning and also to make them feel the need to learn more. And that way, well, they're going to be able to communicate more and more and to develop their own language and most of all, their productive skills, which is what they're going to need in a real life situation. The productive skills, they have to be able to speak in a second language or in a foreign language. Thank you, Aaron. Choose somebody else, please.
Efraín.
Teacher and learner roles. Teacher must respond spontaneously to the learner's unpredictable and flight linguistic needs. The role of the teacher is to react to whatever language emerges as important and then help learners address the gap which has been noted.
Yes, thank you, Efrain. And this is the main reason why some teachers, sometimes we are afraid to put this approach into action, because we have to be able to respond spontaneously to any need or any problem that the students can face in order to accomplish a task. So you have to be very aware, and you have to be able to answer and to cater those needs. And it has to be immediately in the spot. So it demands more preparation and also demands more work. And also you have to be able to react. For instance, if the task at hand comes out as very difficult for your students, well, you have to be able to, in that moment, stop the activity and be able to change it to cater the needs of your students. And also, if you see that some of your students are having trouble with a certain vocabulary or a certain phrase or a certain grammar, well, at the end of the lesson, you have to be able to, well, as the task is progressing, you take notes of those problems that your students are facing. And then at the end of the lesson, you have to be able to provide feedback on those topics or in those needs that the students are putting forth. So that's why sometimes as teachers, we choose not to put this into action, especially with intermediate and advanced learners, because the difficulty increases. Thank you, Efrain. To somebody else, please.
Teacher and learner roles.
Asa.
Sorry.
Yes, continue, Miriam, please.
Task-based teaching calls for the classroom participants to forget what they are and why they are there, and to act in the belief that they can learn the language indirectly through communicating in it rather than directly through studying it.
Thank you, Miriam. I'm pretty sure that for those of you who work in Prony are very aware about the social learning environments that the teacher has to be able to create. Well, this is the reason. If the teacher is able to create a good social learning environment, well, the students, they can forget that they are in a classroom and why they are there, and they can be able to act in the belief that they can learn the language in an indirect form. How? Communicating, speaking, working collaboratively. So this is the importance of being able to create a good learning environment. Thank you, Miriam. Choose somebody else, please.
Georgina.
Teacher and learner roles. The teacher has to be ready to provide the unpredictable help that will be required. This presupposes a border type of readiness for almost anything to occur, compared to the more comfortable ability to prepare for the preordinate structure of the day. A small wonder, then, that many teachers shy away from this approach.
What we've been saying, right? Thank you, Georgina. And that's why many of us, sometimes we choose not to put into action this approach, especially with intermediate and advanced learners. Yes, and this is a call for us to prepare. Thank you. Georgina, to somebody else, please.
Adilene.
Learner roles. Group participant, monitor, and risk taker and innovator.
Thank you. Yes, these are the main roles of the students. They have to participate actively They have to work collaboratively. And also sometimes they have to monitor the work of their peers in order to be able to respond to what they're saying or what they're doing. And most importantly, they have to be able to take risk and innovate. Why? Because in that way, they're going to increase their understanding and they'll be able to learn more by innovating and taking risks. That's the only way. Thank you, Edilene. Choose somebody else, please.
Okay, I'm gonna choose Marisa.
Teacher roles. Selector and sequencer of tasks. Preparing learners for tasks. Consciousness raising.
Thank you, Marisa. The teacher role is very important here because not in the way in the moment that the task is taking place, but most of the work of the teacher comes before and after. But before, well, he has to select and properly sequence the task. Because if he or she fails to do this appropriately, well, it may not become a task-based learning experience. It could become something else, a PPP or another approach. And also in the way that the teacher selects and sequences the task, he or she can provide the proper scaffolding for their students to be able to perform the tasks. Also, well, it has to be, the teacher has to be able to provide very good instructions, clear, short, and understandable instructions for the tasks. And also, he or she has to be able to raise their conscience about the need to collaborate, to participate, and to motivate it in an intrinsic way in order to students to be able to carry out the task. So as we are seeing here, well, it's a workload, an important workload. Most of the time comes before the task and also after the task, because he or she needs to provide the feedback to their students according in how the task was carried out by the students, and also the problems that they experience during the task itself. So that's why, as I was saying, some of us choose not to put this approach into action because it demands time and also demands preparation and the willingness of the teacher to carry out all of these activities. Okay, guys, I'm going to cut short the session here because the time is running out. I'm going to end the session and we'll go back in a moment, okay?
Okay.
See you in a moment.